All right, another day, another laptop that used to be saved. This one's MSI GE68. The customer said that it does not work on the USB-C charge port and the AC adapter, which is funny because about 90% of all the laptops I get end up with the same problem. So let's plug it in and see what it does. Now, before we do that, let's go and check the power adapter and make sure that it actually has any voltage on it. So we're going to go and test the pins like so, and we have negatives on the sides and we got the positive in the middle. If we're reading -20, that's because my probes are flipped. All right, let's go and plug this thing in and see what happens, and press the power button. And there we go, we have a power indicator and the light is yellow. I do not know what that means. Usually when I'm working on Dell laptops, there's an indicator and it gives you an error code with colored flashes. But this is MSI. It doesn't give you any codes. It just gives you one code. And that code is no fix. All right, so I've been waiting for about 20 minutes and nothing really happened. So let's go and unplug this charger. And we're going to go ahead and plug in the USB-C charger instead. See if that helps. So nothing here. I do not see anything happening. Maybe I could try a different charger. Let's go and try that. The cables you want to use for your laptop repairs, so the USB charging port, are these ones. They're very thick. And they usually come with mini soldering irons that I've got a few in the past that I tossed away because they were all junk. But the cables were good. So let's plug this cable in and see if anything changes. And I'm going to monitor the power consumption on my USB thingy. And I see 0.55, like half an amp. And nothing happens. So, and then it dropped down to 0.4. Okay, let's try a different port. We should have a port on the back. Plug that in. It starts to negotiate and it does nothing. Okay, so same thing. Drops down to 0, nothing happens. Okay, let's remove the bottom and see what's going on. All right, the back cover is out. Here we have our battery that is disconnected for some reasons, and we have the NVMe, OneDrive, the Wi-Fi antenna here, cooling fans, and the RTC battery. I'm making you wonder, why is the battery disconnected? So let's go and check for voltage on this battery. Nothing. It's reading nothing. The battery is absolutely dead. I'm reading 0 volt on that battery. And every single pin. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that the battery is bad. What it could mean is that the battery has locked itself out and it will not activate until you actually plug it in. So before we plug this thing in, two things I want to check. I'll check for resistance between the two pins. Make sure that they are not shorted in. We're going to be checking the ground and the positive on the actual laptop. Make sure that we're not shorted there either. And we're reading several kilo ohms. Okay, so the next step, we probably want to run across the board, check for any shorts on any of the coils that we have access to. This here's probably memory or who knows what. I don't know. Never seen this laptop before. And there's another coil here. This is probably memory. And I think that's probably all that I have access to. So let's go ahead and plug in the power supply. See what happens. We could probably take a look at the laptop with a thermal camera to see maybe there's something glowing, and I do not see anything suspicious. Doesn't look like anything's glowing. It's not pulling any kind of power. So let's flip it over on its edge and try to power it on. The power button is on. I see things starting to heat up. That's the hob. So things are starting to heat up. We were to look at the board like this. See, we have a hob just warming up. The looks like the NVMe, and I am hearing clicks. Never mind, just hallucination. So let's sit back and wait and see what happens. Who knows? Maybe it'll be right. So it looks like the fans have finally turned on. This fan here on the left is going, and makes me wonder if we have anything on the screen. And it looks like the screen is still as dark as it was the day it came in. So maybe if we wait a little bit longer, then the laptop would probably fix itself. Who knows? Let's force this thing shut down. And the power button does not respond. I'm holding the power button. Oh, there we go. That took a while for it to shut down. Not sure why that is, but regardless, let's go ahead and unplug the DC power. Let's plug in the battery. There we go. Now with the battery plugged in, we might actually get some voltage reading on this. So let's see. See? We're reading 1.3 volt, so that means that the batteries finally got unlocked once it got plugged in. And if we were to plug in the charger, let's see what the voltage is on the battery right now. And it's actually charging. Look at that. We get 16 volts on the battery. That's most likely coming from the charging circuit. Very interesting. Another thing that's interesting right now is that the oscilloscope is showing me that the battery is actually charging. I'm getting a nice waves on the MOSFET side of the coil that's powering the battery, which indicates that the power on and off cycles do take place. which is strange. Was this the only thing that I needed to do to fix this laptop? I highly doubt that, though we can see that the voltage is already rising, but the power, the laptop is still turned off. Let's go and unplug the power adapter, check for voltage on that coil again, and we are reading 16 volts. So the battery, it actually not only woken up, but it also charged partially. Not exactly sure to what extent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try a USB-C port and see what happens. And, well, nothing really happens. The battery stays at 16.3. The USB port is not pulling any more than 0.5 amp like before. But I wonder what will happen if we press the power button. Well, what could happen is that the laptop might boot off the battery. So that doesn't really help. Let's try a different port. Let's try a USB-C port on the back, and I want to see if it pulls any more current now with the battery connected, and it still pulls the same half an amp and nothing happened. But at the very least, it is not dropping now, so I'm not sure. Either way, what I want to do now, since the laptop is still not posting, even with the battery being connected, I still think that all the powers are present on the board, and the problem might actually be as simple as the BIOS. So I'm going to go and reset the BIOS by simply disconnecting the CMOS battery, like so. I also want to disconnect the battery here, the main battery, so that we do not keep the chip powered on the board, like so. And we're just going to leave it alone for, for a few minutes, and before I do, I'm going to press the power button while there's still a little bit of charge left in the capacitors, and just gonna hold it for 30 seconds or so. And by doing that, I will completely discharge the entire circuit on the board, and hopefully that will reset the BIOS. Right, I think I've been holding it down for long enough. Let's close this thing up, reconnect. Actually, no. Actually, let's go and check that battery, see if there's any kind of voltage on this, because a lot of times if there's a very low voltage on this battery, you could have problems. That's a little bit too low. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this battery, like so. Hopefully we didn't rip off any of the capacitors. Right there, they glued this battery over here, and probably in the worst place possible. What I want to see is, I want to see at the very least, I want to see 3.1, 3.3, 3.3 volt or 3 point something, but 2.6 volt is definitely too low for this battery, so it could very well be the cause of our issue here. So let's go and replace the battery and see what happens. Okay, here's the battery that I'm going to use. Yes, this battery is a little bit bigger, but we're going to go and try it anyway, just for the sake of the diagnostic, and see if it helps. And if it does, then we're going to go and rework this battery from Amazon or something like that. That way we have a properly sized battery in here. But this should be enough for us to just test it out. Let's go and check the voltage on that battery real quick. We're reading 3.1. Yep, that's what I want to see. All right, let's plug the internal battery back in, flip the laptop, plug in the charger, and press the power button. And now we wait. If you wouldn't know how to properly identify the battery that you want for your laptop, what you got to do is to remove the plastic wrap that's around the battery, and then you just kind of zoom into the battery, and then you read. This one reads CR1220, and that's the battery that we want to order. And the laptop right now, as fans are spinning, but it's still not posting. Very interesting. All right, so the thing isn't booting, and there's actually an easy way to reset the BIOS. Not necessarily to reset, but we're going to update the BIOS and see maybe that out now. For this, we're going to need a very old USB 2.0 drive, not 3.0. We need an old 2.0 USB drive with a BIOS file downloaded into drive, and then we're going to plug it into the USB port. We find one right here on the right. And it really helps if your USB drive has some sort of an LED indicator on it, so that way you can tell what's going on while it's doing its work. So that way you know it's actually doing its work. And now, according to the ChatGPT, with the laptop turned off and the USB inserted for the left side USB port, how stupid ChatGPT told me to insert it into the left port, but I don't even have a port on the left. And neither of these two ports that are on the right are labeled any differently than the rest of them. But regardless, who cares? And so it says, hold Control and Home, and while holding, press power. Keep holding keys for 10 seconds. Release and wait. Green may stay black. All right. Control and Home. Where is Home here? You guys see, okay, so Control and Home, but the Home would be a function button, so that doesn't make any sense. And while holding Control and Home, okay, I'm gonna have to ask ChatGPT to be a little bit more specific, to give me the guidelines specifically for this model, because the keyboard layout is very different as to what It tells me. Well, it gives me the exact same set of instructions for this laptop as well, so might as well go ahead and do that. So we're going to press Control, we're going to press Home, and we're going to press the power button while holding these two buttons together. And he said, by he I mean the Skynet, that once the process starts going, we're going to hear fans going in 100%. So, oh, actually, I forgot to, no, I did not. Everything is plugged in, so let's go and let me turn this thing off, because I think it's turning on right now. I'm going to have to force it down. Okay, so it's turned off. Okay, so Control and Home. It didn't say left control or right control, so I'm just assuming it's going to be this control. And I'll go ahead and press the power button and hold it, and the indicator of the power button is on there. I guess I held the power button for too long, so let's do it again, because if you hold it for too long, you're forcing the shutdown. So Control, Home, Power, and we're holding the Control and Home while letting the power do its thing. Because if we were holding the power button at the same time as holding these, it would force itself into shutdown. So basically what we're doing right now is we're monitoring this USB drive for any kind of activity. As soon as it starts flashing, I'm going to assume that the process actually kicked in and it's actually doing something. But right now I see zero indication on that USB port. So let's go ahead and shut this thing down. Wait for the orange light to go away. There we go. So Control, let's try a different port. Here, Control, Home, Power, and we're holding, and I still see no indicator on the USB drive at all. It's completely silent. I'm gonna go back and tell ChatGPT that he's a moron, and I'll get right back. All right, let's try again. This time I asked not ChatGPT, but Gemini. See if the Gemini helps, and the Gemini actually tells me that I have a completely different key combination, which are Control and Escape, or Windows plus B. So we're going to go Control and Escape during startup with the AC adapter plugged in into trigger to trigger the recovery. Okay, so they're going to press Control and Escape and press the power button, and we're going to observe the USB drive for any kind of activity, and there's zero activity whatsoever. All right, there's no activity whatsoever. All right, let's turn this thing off. So what I'm suspecting now is that we may actually have a problem with the USB port. So let's go and check this USB port for any kind of data. I'll plug this thing in, see if we can get any kind of reading in here. Do I need this sophisticated device? Probably not. Let's go ahead and try the cheaper one. This one here should be enough. There. Okay, let's power this thing on. See if it powers. Okay, so that's power. So we got 5 volt on this port. That's good. What about this one here? And this one seems to be working as well. All right. Okay. Interesting. Let's turn this thing off. And why does it not access the drive? I do not know. What I want to know is, do we have an issue with the display or not? Because what I'm seeing here is that it seems like the laptop is powering on, but for whatever reason, we're not getting an image on the screen. So it could be the BIOS, but it could actually be the monitor itself. And for me, there's really no way to test this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over under a microscope and see if we have any kind of issues with that connector here. And looks like it shouldn't have any kind of issues here with the display being connected properly. It looks good, but I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the main battery just in case. And I'm going to go ahead and check out monitor connector real quick. So here we go. So that opens up nice. Let's see how that comes out. It's supposed to just come right out, and looks like it just came right out. The pins look good. Let's look inside the port to make sure that there's no damage inside of that port. And it looks good. Yep. No issues with the port. All right, let's connect this thing back together and continue with attempting the BIOS reset instead. Maybe try different combinations and whatnot. Now, the issue is here that I have to properly align this connector, and that is not easy. You did not want to misalign this. Looks like this is it. That goes in there. This is actually a very nice connector, I must admit. And let's continue on trying the reset process with the USB stick. This time it's try a whole different combination. We're going to try Windows B this time, powered on, and the USB device shows us zero activity. Very strange. Well, nothing happened. All right, 20 more back and forth heedful sessions with ChatGPT. Let's plug in the drive again. So this time we have renamed the file, changed its extension to ROM, and then things says, with the laptop completely disconnected from the mains, we go Control and Home, and we plug in the charger, and it says that we do nothing but wait. And I don't think anything's going to happen if we do this. So instead, let's go and power this thing on. See what happens. See if maybe this time it'll actually start accessing the drive, and it does not. Let's unplug the AC power, and let's unplug the battery as well. There we go, right there. All right, let's repeat. Maybe we can try a different port. Okay, so we're gonna go aimed into the port, but not all the way. Okay, so we're gonna call control and home and shove that cable in, and nothing happens. We're gonna have to press that power button. Still nothing. All right, after holding this for 30 seconds, we're going to repeat the same process. Go into aim and control home and shove that in, and it says do absolutely nothing. So I'm doing nothing. Let's see if it will power by itself or the LEDs gonna start flashing on the USB drive, which I highly doubt. And it says I have to hold it for 10 to 15 seconds, and the laptop is not powering on. Maybe we need to hold these. No, press the power button. Still nothing. All right, so I'm sick and tired of this thing. Let's go ahead and plug in the USB initialization USB monitoring device here that we plug it in, and we can see there's any activity on the USB port once we plug it in. So that light here, as you can see, blinking red and blue, that's supposed to go rapidly as soon as the system starts to initialize. But as we can see here, it does nothing but pulsating, which means that the system is not initializing at all, which means that the BIOS is corrupt, which means we need to flash the BIOS. The problem is that we're having right now is that we just cannot seem to flash that BIOS using whatever method ChatGPT is telling us to use. So we're gonna have to do this the old school method, which is desoldering the chip. Well, for one, we're gonna have to find out which chip that is. I don't know exactly where it is, but we're gonna have to figure this out. Remove that chip, flash it. I'm guessing it's probably here. I do not know, and see if it helps. Right, so we're looking for a BIOS chip, and I think I see something in here. This one is right next to the GPU. If we would adjust our lens so we can read that. See, this is a WinBond, and this chip is not the one that we want. This one's actually for the GPU, or to their least, most likely to be. So, but there's a different chip here on the opposite end of the board. This one's also WinBond, and a lot of times they start with that 25Q or something like that, something along the lines of 25, and that's usually an indicator that this chip actually holds some kind of data. And also, sometimes they have like a color marking on the chip. Allow me to demonstrate some kind of a dot, usually a different color, you know, like maybe a silver color or whatever. And that also is an indicator of that chip being programmed with something. So let's go and desolder this chip. I could use an adapter to read it, but it would be very difficult for me to do it because I would have to hold it steady for a significant amount of time, which I'm not particularly good at. So I'm just going to go and desolder the chip, read it, make sure I save a backup, and then I would flash it with whatever I find on the internet, and hopefully that helps. Okay, here's our chip. We have just read it, and there seems to be a lot of blank area at the very beginning of it. I don't know if this is normal or not, so we're going to go ahead and save this and then reflash it with a different BIOS file that we downloaded earlier from the MSI official website. And as you can see here, as soon as I loaded this ROM file, the whole layout starts to look very different, and we always having data right here, but it does go blank after a while. But we do have a whole lot going on here at the very beginning, so maybe this is all there is. I don't know. Okay, so we reflashed the BIOS. Let's go and plug in the battery. Put this thing over, plugged in, and this is going to be our initialization USB drive. Plug it in. We're going to start looking at the flickering light. Power button is on, and we want this light to start rapidly clicking. That would give us an indication that the system is actually trying to initialize. And so far, nothing's going on, but we have just flashed the BIOS, so we're gonna have to wait. All right, so that did not help, and I think the reason for that is because we have two chips on the board that are programmable. This may very well be the EEC chip instead of the BIOS. And as a matter of fact, if we were to look closer, let me go and switch over to the main screen here. If we were to look over to the bottom where the CMOS battery connection was, we actually see another chip. And this one is most likely to be the one that we needed to be flashing. So let's go ahead and flash this chip instead. And what I'm going to do also, I'm going to take the chip that I flashed earlier and flash it back to where it was. Good thing I did save the backup. So before you're doing kind of flashing the way I did, make sure you always create a backup. And the biggest challenge I'm having here is that the MSI did a great job at protecting you for replacing your battery. And what I mean is the battery is actually glued to the bottom of the case, and there's a pad that's holding the battery in place, and it's very difficult to get it removed, but I did manage to get it kind of sliced on this end by partially disconnecting the speaker, potentially damaging the speaker. But prying the battery out, it does not work. So, but I'm trying, and you do not want to be aggressive here, because at any kind of force, you're running into a risk of shorting this battery internally. And then if you do, it's going to be a kaboom. Would not want to see any kind of kabooms here today. So we gonna have to be super careful, and what I'm trying to do is just trying to get this speaker out of the way somehow, and it is proven to be nearly impossible. There we go. So I finally get the speaker out, and now I need to insert something like this little wedge tool here, and I want to kind of sort of cut that fall. This is ridiculous. There, I think we can get a little bit. There we go. So yeah, this thing was glued, as you can see here, these glowing patch here. Thanks a lot, MSI. Do not buy MSI laptops ever again. Okay, so let's get this fire hazard out of the way, and we're now finally have access to the BIOS chip. So let's go ahead and desolder this chip, or maybe I can try to flash it directly and see what happens. Okay, so now this is how the file looks like. Now let's go ahead and load, just scroll down, trying to see what we have, what it looks like. Yeah, and I'm gonna go ahead and load the file that we downloaded previously. And once we loaded the files, you can see here, it looks nearly identical. So I think, or at least we know that the data that we're flashing out to this BIOS chip is correct. So let's go and program this, and hopefully everything goes smooth. Okay, I'm now going to leave the battery out of the case. You can see here, there's no battery here. We're going to plug it in into our power adapter. Oh, actually, I forgot to plug in the battery. So let's do that real quick. And the one thing that kind of worries me a little bit is that it's not that I had to desolder the chip in order to flash it. It's just that it's a little bit too close to the hub, and so that could potentially create a cracked solder joint, which would force me to reflow or reball the hub, which I would not like to do anytime soon. Okay, with the battery connected and DC jack plugged in, let's flip this thing over, open it up, plug in our tester. It looks like the laptop is all the way turned itself on. Doesn't matter. We can still plug it in and watch the blinking light blink. Okay, so the laptop turned itself off. That's good. It turned itself on again. That's very good. The monitor actually flickers, and I think it's going through a self-reset. Oh, there we go. See, that's the light that I wanted to see. And as a matter of fact, the laptop is now posted. We have picture! Yeah, for whatever reason, the reboot cycle took us several times, maybe at least 5 times or so. But eventually it started to load the operating system, which you can see here, we have a circle spinning. So I'm guessing there we have it. The guy's name is Richard Gervais. I don't think it's that funny guy. Oh no. Okay, so the touchpad is working. Let's go and shut this thing down. Shut down anyway. And we already know that the battery is actually working. So we're gonna go ahead, wait for this thing to shut down, disconnect the AC adapter, and we're going to plug the battery back in. And we're going to wait for the correct battery to arrive in just a couple of days, or we can shove that in there. Not gonna fit. It's a bit too wide. Okay, so we were able to resolve the issue with this one, and I'm thinking that the cost for a failed BIOS or corrupt BIOS was none other than the half-dead CMOS battery, and replacing which did not resolve the problem because the BIOS did get indeed corrupt, and but reflashing it saved the day as usual. And let me know your thoughts on this one, and thanks for watching.